So resources are here, everything is here.
Yeah.
We described in the beginning with the principle of diversity, that aspect of ecology. It's like the seeing of abundance. You know, the first thing you learn when you study economics is the principle of scarcity. I remember when I sat in an economics class once, and that was like the first thing that was said, and I just thought, holy shit, this whole way of thinking is built on the belief in scarcity. None of it's real. None of it is valid, because scarcity actually isn't a thing. We can say technically you can have like a less amount of something, but if we really look at nature, it is deeply regenerative. And when you work with the intelligence of nature, it's like resources are just endless. They are endless. And it's the consciousness of scarcity that has allowed the planet to really struggle with poverty and things like hunger, super unnecessary things. We all have the intelligence and the solutions to solve these problems, by the way. So why aren't they solved? Because people are stuck within a consciousness where the solution, the simple solution, could be right there in front of them, but it's like they cannot even see it because it's so counter to the map of reality that they have learned from trauma, feeling unsafe, all of these things that we're all carrying, because our entire civilization is basically has been built out of a trauma response. So when we come back into the belly, yeah, as James was saying, it can be very uncomfortable, because as that opens, all of these things that have been held on to start to release. Can be very uncomfortable. We can reach deeply new levels of sensitivity. But on the other side of that letting go, that releasing and the softening through the gut, then there's that coming back to that almost 0 point of rest that is very full. And when we can arrive there, we allow very much that receptive energy. Because if you're just, let's say, principles 1 and 2 of diversity in your active intelligence and thinking and creating intricate maps, functional maps, and the principle of perturbation as that friction and the evolutionary capacity, these are really important, but without the principle of benevolence as the receptive part, you're never allowing your system to fully land into that new intelligence. And that's why you can't really continue with principles 1 and 2 without a deep integration of that fourth principle of benevolence, because that allows, it's like if, let's think of it this way, principles 1 and 2, diversity, especially perturbation, you're increasing, you're expanding, going up.
Tension.
But then there's this period of stabilizing out, acclimatizing to the new level, stabilizing what was originally like, stress because I'm pushing my system to evolve, uncomfortable. Okay, and now we're like normalizing, and now integrated. And that integration is where it stabilizes and it becomes a new baseline. But you cannot make that evolutionary movement a baseline without that capacity to come into that neutral, the yin, the resting part of that cycle.
Yeah.
It's just as important, even though it isn't that fast movement, evolutionary go-go of that. It's just as important.
Yeah, it's the belly has been so wonderful. It's such a wonderful thing.
To actually be able to sit and enjoy the fruits of your labour. I mean, you do see, especially with a lot of the hard-working, super industrious men type of people, they just go, but they never actually get to properly enjoy that which they've achieved. And it's no good. And that often, if they're in a family environment, that affects the family, right? Where it's like that, because to actually sit and connect and enjoy one another and to really soak up the intimacy and the nourishment of those sorts of experiences, you have to be able to wind down. If you're just that wound up all the time, then eventually you're going to get to a point where that collapses through burnout, or your relationships suffer at the expense of outer world success, or whatever it is. You get to a nervous breakdown because you're not allowing your system to calm itself.
I think too with the belly, there's something about, I think a lot of us have like a a deep belief that something is bad is going to happen. Like I think a lot of us hold that quite deep. Like I think
unconscious fear.
We're all holding something like, oh my God, life is going to do something bad, unpredictable, and I'm going to get screwed over. The belly ends that. So can you imagine for a moment what it would be like to not have that sort of belief operating? Like it's very different. And then you go, well, what does that mean for money? If you're someone that, lots of people are like this, you know, money issues, it's unpredictable. Where's it coming from? How's this going to work? And then you're met with this deep feeling in the body of, it's fine. It's fine. And the world's not going to attack you. And the world's it's not out to get you. The tax office and the banks and whoever you believe is coming after you is not, on some level, you know.
And you can see how, because most of our culture and the people within our civilization have built on the avoidance of, oh my God, something bad's going to happen, where that fear is in the unconscious, it can only mean that those structures built on that avoidance will eventually crash. And then the reality is created where, oh my God, there is chaos. The systems are like people going crazy, back into tribalism and violence and but these things are it's just the systems of avoidance collapsing, and you're returning to that which was always there, but you just didn't process it because you just didn't want to be present with yourself. And everyone's doing that at a collective level. Everyone's avoiding at a collective level. So it's like the returning to the Eden, the Garden of Eden.
I also want to say something. So when you go and you start to put your services out to more people and you start to share yourself with other people, you might see old beliefs like, I've done something wrong, or I can't do that. And there's something so tender and sweet in the belly where it says something like, darling, you've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong. You're so sweet for putting that out there. And it's just turning around that hardness that prevents us from expanding.
That energy.
And she just, because it's her, she just says to us, how beautiful you are that you put that out there.
Yeah, the maternal nourishment, the unconditional tenderness.
It's like you put that out there, that is a masterpiece. And the thing is, your mind will go and it will go, yeah, no, it's not, it could be better. But there's something very magical about when we belong more to the belly, it actually changes the way the world perceives what we do anyway. Because, yeah, so...
It's that returning to the child state. If you were a child and you had present parents and you were engaging in your exploration of life, then there would be that encouragement, right? Which many of us didn't get because our parents never got that for themselves, and there's a lack of present attention and encouragement of our own processes and our own unfolding, and we're kind of injected with other rules and things. So it's a strong rewiring, but
loosens up the mind when you find those voices of, that was amazing, that was so good what you did, and you rewire a lot of that hardness in the mind, and then you start to feel like the fool. So the fool actually can be the fool, which some of you might have seen us speak about. The fool is really the fusion of that loosened mind with an open gut. Like it's like the such a childlike quality that every moment begins fresh all the time. It's like bam, bam, bam. The past is erased. Bam, 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 bam. And that's the fusion of the stomach with that mind that keeps letting go.
Well, so much of how the mental processes are functioning for most people are based on the control. So, of course, it rewires the mind, because when the gut relaxes, then the brain can relax too and open. And that allows for perception to, again, be rewired out of scarcity, or something wrong's going to happen all the time. And so I'm sort of thinking about reality and interpreting and solving problems from that point of view. Actually, everything's okay. Everything's fine. And then what does the mind do? The mind can become much more creative. And this comes back to the first principle of diversity. Rather than thinking, how can I make more money in these different incomes? It's more like, like what actually is what is the next step for this? Or what could I do here? What would be fun? Or what would be a cool exploration? And that's a completely different way of relating to your own work. At this point, it becomes play.
When I started to connect to the belly, I started making small gardens. And I wasn't doing it because it wasn't necessarily like gardening itself, the subject matter interested me, but it was the feeling of gardening. It was the feeling of
ecology.
It was the body just going like, this is magic.
Yeah, I'm growing food.
Yeah, and I was growing the
Nourishment.
quality of that magic, and then I could apply it into other things. So, yeah.
And the benevolence principle is the rewiring of existence or the feminine aspect as something chaotic, and returning it to that which is benevolent, abundant, nourishing, and like that which holds the seeds of all forms of creation.
It's like also the assumption of like something magnificent is going to happen. It's an assumption that something magic is going to happen.
Not even like, it's more of a knowing.
It's a knowing, yeah.
It's like, oh,
yeah.
What's up next?
It's like I could, and I used to have this contemplation of what's around the corner, because I'd always known in my life, I'd always thought and believed that what's around the corner is fucked. And so I turned that around and it was like, what's around the corner could be amazing. Yeah, so it's the kingdom of heaven.